Last week, we looked at how various documents or sources were weaved together to form the Pentateuch. This week, we are looking at how various documents or sources were weaved together to form the Synoptic Gospels. When we refer to the Synoptic Gospels, we are speaking about Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John is not considered a Synoptic Gospel. The first three are called synoptics because their point of view is remarkably similar. In fact, their similarities go beyond point of view to similarity in the stories told, even to remarkably similar words, phrases, and sentences within those stories. It's clear that some kind of literary relationship exists between the three. That is, one or two of them used one or both of the others in writing their gospel. The question of who depended on whom or who used whom in the writing of their own gospel is called the synoptic problem, which is really more of a puzzle than a problem, which sounds a bit negative, unless you like solving problems. At the heart of the synoptic problem is the following question: what accounts for the similarities between Matthew, Mark, and Luke in light of the differences, and vice versa? In this week's readings and PowerPoint, we will learn about the two major solutions or hypotheses designed to solve this problem, along with one minor hypothesis. The question of who used whom could sound like a trivial pursuit. However, the potential payoff for figuring this out lies in the ability to do what we call redaction criticism. Redaction criticism is the art and science of studying how one author used a source by choosing what to use and what not to use, and by changing the source to meet his or her own needs and purposes. In order to do redaction criticism, one must begin with a hypothesis or understanding of who used whom. Some scholars have spent their whole careers working on the synoptic problem and arguing why their solution is the best. When I was a doctoral student at Princeton Theological Seminary, I took a doctoral seminar in the Gospel of Mark. My professor divided the class into two groups and assigned us to debate the two major hypotheses. So we did. This I found only marginally enlightening. What I found much more enlightening was an assignment that Father Hummel assigned us when I took a master's level course at Villanova University in the Synoptic Gospels and Acts a year earlier. He assigned us about a half dozen triple tradition passages. Triple tradition passages are stories that appear in all three of the Synoptic Gospels. Our assignment was to assume that Matthew was written first, then Luke, using Matthew, then Mark, using both Matthew and Luke. We were then to do a redactional analysis of those passages based on that assumption. That is, we were to explain how and why Luke changed Matthew as he did, then how and why Mark changed both Matthew and Luke as he did. Then we were to turn around and start over doing another redactional analysis based on the other assumption. That is, we were to explain how and why Matthew and Luke independently used and changed Mark in the ways that they did. I thought it was a lot easier to explain the redactions, or the editing, if one assumed that Mark was written first. Redaction based on the Matthean priority assumption I found harder to understand and explain. This little exercise convinced me more than anything else that Mark was written first. After introducing the synoptic problem, we will examine Luke and Acts a bit more thoroughly. All of this is quite introductory, but we will need to depend on Ehrman to introduce us to Matthew and Mark. In the PowerPoint, I will introduce some of the primary literary features of Luke, as well as some of its theological emphases. Happy reading.